In this segment, I'm going to talk about tape measures and which ones that we use here at the school. It's one of our most important tools that we use, and there are several that are available. I'm going to recommend two of my most favorite, and you can see that I'm actually wearing them appropriately around my neck. In Couture Sewing here at the school, we use measuring tapes for almost everything that we measure, and I have several here to show you, and I will talk about what the advantages and disadvantages of each are. I'm going to begin with this measuring tape here. Now, it is white on one side and yellow on the other side, and it begins at 0 and goes all the way to 150 centimeters, which is a typical length for a dressmaking and tailoring measuring tape. Now, they have metal ends on them, and the metal end has a hole in it. Now, those are great for either hanging up your measuring tape, or you can use it as a pivot point. If you anchor that by a pin, you can use it as an anchor point. But it does have a very small or very short metal end. Now, this one you can kind of see that it has been used quite a lot, and it is ruffling a little bit. Now, this ruffling happened because of the heat. I think it got pressed once under the plate of a hot iron, and you shouldn't ever do that. It should look more like this, and it should be straight. This is the other end. So that's what happens if you get them too hot. Now, on the white side, you'll see that the numbers are measured off in centimeters, and here we are in inches, which is imperial, upside down. And here at the school, we usually work in centimeters, but it's also very handy to have the imperial system. So this is one of my favorite ones. The other thing about the width of this particular one, it is exactly 2 centimeters wide. So you can use the width of your tape measure also to measure in 2 centimeter increments if you need to. Now, the next one here is white on both sides. It's flexible, and it has not been pressed on. You can see it's quite sturdy, and it has quite a long metal end on it with also holes here to hook it up. Now, on one side it has the centimeters, and on the other side it has inches. And this one is 150 centimeters long as well. Now, the width of this tape measure is 1.8 centimeters, so not quite 2 centimeters. So if you were using this as a tool to measure widths, you can use it. Now, if we align this with the imperial side, we can see that it is exactly 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch, or 1.8 centimeters. And the reason this has a long metal tip is for tailoring. It's great for measuring the inseam of a pant leg. So it helps for modesty's sake to have this to get into corners and areas where you don't necessarily want your fingers. So that's what that is for. Now, I don't particularly like using this for couture because this is stiff, and you can't bend it to get some measurements sometimes. Now, this one here is, let me just turn it around here, as you can see, it has different colors. This is also in metric, and each color section is 10 centimeters. So you can see at a glance, the 10 centimeter differences. And on the reverse side, it's all yellow, and it is in centimeters. Now, most tape measures that have the same increments on both sides, whether it's imperial or centimeters, one end will begin at 0 here, and the other end will begin, or if you flip it, it goes to 150, so it's reversible. Now that can be very confusing at times. If you're measuring something or someone and you're using a round measurement, be aware of what side you're reading from, because if you happen to flip that and you're looking for this measurement and it says 90 here, and if you read it from the wrong side, it says 60, so you can easily make a mistake in your measurement taking. So that's something to be aware of. Now this one is also, if we measure the width of this, it is almost 2 centimeters wide, but not quite. It is, if we put it on the imperial side, it is closer to 3/4 of an inch. But we don't want to mix. We either, if we're using metric, we stick with metric, and if we're using imperial, let's stick with imperial. Now this one is one that I've been using for many, many years, and I love it a lot for a couple of reasons. One is that it's all one color on one side and white on the other. So if you are taking measurements, you are aware of which color you should be reading. So if you're reading the wrong color, or one from the green side and one from the white side, you should be consistent. The other thing about this tape measure is that, let me just show it to you, it has imperial and metric alongside each other on both sides. Okay, so that's very, very handy. This is my most preferred measuring tape for that reason. The other thing about this particular tape measure is that its width is, if you're working in imperial, it's 5/8 of an inch, which is something that is used an awful lot for seam allowances. And it is also, if we're measuring in centimeters, it is as close to 1.5 centimeters as is necessary for seam allowances. Now here is another tape measure, and it is very, very narrow. It's not very expensive, and it's not very sturdy either, but it still works, and it has metric on one side and imperial on the other. Now if we measure the width of this tape measure, it is exactly 1/2 inch, which can be very useful if you are doing some seam allowances. You just follow your edge with the width of your tape measure, and you're always consistent. The other tape measure that we use here at the school is our half scale measuring tape. Now from here to here, 0 and 100 is exactly 1 meter, but in half scale, which is ideal for working with our half scale mannequins. We often use half scale mannequins to work out designs before we do them in full scale. So that is basically the range of tape measures that are available for dressmaking. Now you might also find tape measures that are spooled in these cases, and they are actually much longer than 1.5 meters. That's just 150 centimeters. They are very, very handy for when you are measuring for soft furnishings, for drapery, or for coverings for sofas if you're making slip covers. So that's also handy to carry with you if you are going to a fabric store and you are looking for something in particular and you need to measure it. Then these measuring tapes are very, very handy, and they're very easy to carry. Okay, so those are the tape measures that are all useful for the school. My top picks, obviously, is the half scale, and this one is my all-time favorite tape measure, followed by this one because it's very flexible. flexible and it's very, very soft. I like to use it. Then the next one would be this one, which is easy to read. I don't like using this one. And this one you need when you're doing tailoring. So tape measures run anywhere from a couple of dollars Canadian to about $10. That's the most you should ever have to pay for a tape measure. And they will last a long time as long as you don't cut through them by accident. And these half-scale measuring tapes are exclusive to Ecole Holt Couture, and that is the summary of tape measures.